Right. So now we can start this course. This is basically regarding the glaucoma detection, its early detection, and how to manage it and the battle is not over till the last man has been included in it. So there we have got some strategies, and based on those strategies, we are going to be talking at different levels as to what are we supposed to be doing at different levels. So just a moment. Let me start sharing my slides.
Sanjana.
So, doctor, you want to
Right.
start the session?
No. Yeah, I'll start
We
the
have
session
all the
because I haven't
speakers.
got any information. We have our participants in, except Dr. Kirti Singh. All of them are in now.
Okay, doctor, you can take over the session.
Yeah, only Dr. Kirti Singh is not visible. Maybe
Okay.
she's somewhere, but others are visible. So we can start from here.
Yes, doctor. The session
So
is all yours.
right. So hi Kirti. So Dr. Kirti is also there now. So we all are full. The quorum is full. So we have Dr. Sunita Dubey, Dr. Shivani Dikshit, Major Mrs. Sagarika Patial, Dr. Medha Prabhu Desai, and Dr. Kirti Singh. And we'll have a keynote speaker, and he would be talking actually about engine. The topic which is given here was given by AIOS, but it's something different what he is going to talk about. So let me first do the pleasure of introducing my faculty, all girls and all my friends, right? So the first speaker will be Dr. Sunita Dubey, and she would be talking about how are we going to do glaucoma services at Vision Center. Dr. Sunita is a hardcore glaucoma specialist, but lately she assumed a role of AMD also of a hospital. So the community of ophthalmology is no longer beyond her reach. And she is an avid academician, and her special love is MIGS. And there's no end. There's so much to talk about, Sunita, because in this here, we all have very veteran faculty who have got loads of things in common, that they have published many papers, they are in big positions, they're directors, medical directors, but with us, we have also a greenhorn. Greenhorn in army, you call a person who's just sort of joined, and that is Shivani Dikshit. Shivani is a FICO in glaucoma, and she's a fellow of Narayan Netralaya. She worked with us for 2 years, and now she shifted to a corporate setup in Indore. So she has been with me, and I trust her this thing. She would be talking about the outreach. Then we have Major Sagarika Patial. Sagarika is my comrade from the arms. That we have too many things to share when it comes with Sagarika. And Sagarika is also a veteran. She's done her glaucoma training from Matpi Center. And other than that, being a general in army is not a small feat. And all the awards and all that go with it are with her. She's an extremely hardworking person, and she's been a presenter, publisher all along. And more than everything else, she just loves to teach and do glaucoma work. After Sagarika is Dr. Kirti Singh. Dr. Kirti Singh is a Lady Harding graduate, AIMS postgraduate, and Wilmer Fellow. And then she diversified into medical education as well as into hospital administration. But right now she's doing glaucoma, and she's doing almost all three of them together. So she is a package. And all those things that I said, publishing, this, that, research, Kirti is absolutely perfect at it. And then we have in end Dr. Medha. Medha, I know for last more than 3 decades, I think early 90s onwards. And Medha has been committed hardcore glaucoma, and more glaucoma. She's medical director of a hospital. And she's great at OCTs and technology. So her OCT books and all is pretty well known to all of us. She's a master of the game, but her love in technology would make her speak about technology, how we can use technology to make this process that we want to start. And finally, the keynote person is Dr. Nathan. I'll introduce him as and when his presentation is available. So I am the opening batsman or woman, whatever you call it. And I would go to something very simple as to how do we utilize community level volunteers for case detection, advocacy, linkage, and prevention of glaucoma blindness. It's a very important matter. So about myself, well, all I would say, for me, more important than me is the mission that I've undertaken, that this 95-year-old hospital, I'm working on bringing it back to its old glory. And as most of you will know, this was the first structured eye care hospital, which had everything from medical education to huge community outreach, super specialties, and it was the largest hospital of the Asia. But things happened, but now where we stand now, we have all the subspecialties. We have medical education, that we have 15 MS seats, we have paramedical, 40 B-optomes every year, we have ophthalmic assistants, we have a very robust community service with vision centers, outreach, and branches. And we do 70% of people free and 30% patients are paid. So with that, I'll start my actual talk. Who is this last human about whom we are worried about glaucoma? So this last human is everywhere. Actually, if you look at it, we are living in a country with a population of 70% people living in rural areas. And the last man is the man who's living in villages. The last man is the person who's living in mountain, who lives in forests, jungles. And last man is that soldier also who's guarding our borders. None of these people have really standard health service. Not only that they need service, they also need a linkage as to how to reach when they have a problem. And today we shall discuss as to how to encompass, and therefore all the talks are designed in such a manner that all these talks will slowly cover the subjects. And back in people, I have put my two talks together. So this time probably will change a little bit, because the last talk I'm not doing, I want to give my time to the my co-people, because they may have a little more than me to tell. So the barrier is not only service, actually, the lack of awareness amongst these people is a major challenge. And more than that, they have no information about eye care facilities. They are very scared people, emotionally very disturbed kind of people, and they come from poor homes. They have a fear of going to hospital. They're really scared of going to hospital. They don't want to go. And most of all, the eye is considered a paired organ in the whole body. So eye care is almost the last that takes precedence in their order of merit. So coming to, if you look at this picture, this is the picture the first day NPCB was signed, and the person in the corner is Dr. MP Mere. It was his advocacy that worked on Indira Gandhi. The team that you see is the team that conceived and made everything happen. But minus Dr. MP Mere, nothing would have happened, because not only that he gave a working platform, and he convinced the policymakers that this program is required since 1973. And goal of this program was to bring down the blindness by 0.3%. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. 2020 is gone and we are living in 2021. So why it didn't happen? Because there was no strategy truly, and there were no systems. And more than that, glaucoma was considered a second-grade disease. The focus was on cataract, and more cataract. And one of our members is sitting here who is in glaucoma task force, that is Sunita Dubey. So what happened is, now in 12th plan, they have extended this to specific goals, and specific goals that they will cover these 4 diseases, that is glaucoma, what is that called? Glaucoma, childhood blindness, and diabetic retinopathy. But still the plan of action, strategies, and advocacy on this available. So what is this community health worker about whom I'm going to be talking about? Well, these are the people from the same community. These members are trained in a manner that they know basic things about the disease, and they can help the people to seek the healthcare services wherever they are available. Therefore, these people will make a very important part, and also they will make a very important link between the community and the health setup. So now we have to look at their role, their training, and their responsibilities. So they create connection between vulnerable population and healthcare providers. They help patients navigate with healthcare and social systems. They manage care, the transition of vulnerable population from hospital to their homes. They reduce social isolation amongst the patients, and that increases the high trust acceptance of these people. So they have a little educated background, but they're not fully this thing. So they're trained, they are taught communication skills, and they are also taught how to do advocacy. And finally, they have to be facilitators and motivational people for the advocacy. Advocacy here at this level means the people should be willing to seek the healthcare. So now services provided, they will provide advocacy, or they are providing actually are trained people, outreach and VC Connect, eye education, eye care services, and social and emotional support. So what is this ASHA? Before coming to Sitapur, I had no idea what ASHA meant was truly. But after coming here, I realized these are actually accredited people by the country through the National Health Mission, and they complete the continuum of the things. So but in NPCV, when the program was made, the eye care came in the blind spot, and so came the glaucoma care automatically. So we picked up 5,452 of these ASHA workers from 8 districts. And with the help of Site Savers funding, we trained all these people into eye care things, including the glaucoma care. And we made a very simple design booklet. So their training was glaucoma is an optic nerve disease. Vision is lost, cannot be regained. Detected early, can be saved, and is asymptomatic disease. Above 40, everybody needs a screening. Then this is their training module. This is all picture based and very few things. Very simple pictures so that they make the people understand, they understand themselves. They were taught about the risk factors of open angle glaucoma, angle closure glaucomas, and you'll be surprised that the factors which have been listed are known to them because they are part of the same community in which they are serving. So in villages, the way of living is community living, and everybody knows almost everything about each other. So the training basically was looking at the children pictures, that if a child has got big eyes, epiphora, above 40 years of people, and we gave them e-charts, so they will record vision with the e-charts and connect these people to vision centers or base hospital, wherever it's easy for them to connect. Counseling and advocacy is a very, very important part of the training, and we need it in glaucoma for more than anything else. They work as a counselor in the village. So they get them seen here, then they know about the medications, they teach them how to put the drops, they remind them that the drops are over, you have to buy them, and they help them buy the drops or the treatment, whatever doctor advises, they help them reach the place and get the treatment done. But why should they do it? Unfortunately, there is no money built in the program for their honorarium. So we have been working hard, and now Dr. Pramila Gupta has built 1,000 rupees a month for NICDs. There are other health workers also. But they work on the same platform on which these people are working. They are Anganwadis, community level volunteers. Now coming down to advocacy. Advocacy is an act of pleading to support, actually to gain a support and a political commitment. And this is very much required. Without that, we can't really reach anywhere. So early detection of cases is the most important part of glaucoma. And suppose we have a simple goal like 30% increase in the detection by 2027. Now here the primary audience will be policymakers. So the people who are in AIMS, who are in GNAC can walk up to the policymakers and get them into the fold. And then we can create awareness programs at different multiple levels. But they have to allow the program's facilitation. So to create a program, we have to have a situation, we have to have a goal, we have to have the target audience, we have to have key messages, we have to implement, and we have to monitor. So defining is what is the current need, what is the gap, how are we going to fill this gap, from what skills, from what resources, what infrastructure. Then comes establishing a goal and objectives. So it should be SMART, that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. The code word is that it should be ambitious, but it should be realistic and achievable. Otherwise, you're demoralized. And primary audience, as I already said, the people in state and national capital have to work on the policymakers. Secondary audience could be the people for which we have all these awareness programs like Glaucoma Week, etc. But this Glaucoma Week should not be in the week. The program like this should last the whole year. Then developing key messages for the people who are primary audience, for the policymakers, something as simple as glaucoma is asymptomatic disease in which blindness can be saved by early detection and prevention of progression. Now, this message goes to the same policymakers through a number of channels, from a non-government channel, from a government channel, from multiple sources, then they are more likely to believe and support the cause. Then powerful public messages. It should be based on a belief. They all believe that glaucoma is an attack. We got to tell them, look, it's not an attack, but it's actually a asymptomatic disease. It will make you blind. And therefore, you got to take the incentive yourself. And then all those who don't have glaucoma can make other people aware about it. Your family members are more affected. So these kind of things. Then media utilization, we are doing on a big way, but I think we need to do it a little more often. We can use celebrity for the media, but what really works is these personal meetings and official letters at the number one, at the policy level, at the general public level. What really works are the celebrities, heroes, but at the ground root level, what really works is what we do. That means the people whom they trust, when they speak about it, it works. Like a simple thing out of the OPD, a doctor who's a glaucoma doctor walks out, or the optometrist goes and just tells the people outside waiting, like, this is what it is and this is what you need to do. Believe me, that has a far more impact than any kind of awareness programs where we spend loads and loads of money. So mass coverage is very important, and we have to catch them from outreach to vision centers, to hospitals, to market, bus stands, railway, fairs, beaches, resorts. And don't laugh at beaches and resort. Many people who are very educated but are very uneducated about their health. And finally, the offices of policymakers. This monitoring has to be effective. And what we will get is, what are the number of cases that we are getting? That will tell us that whether our technique of doing it is correct. Are we reaching the right people? And are we communicating them the right way? Resource mobilization is very important. We all know we don't have universal health cover. And we also know that everything is thrown on the shoulders of NGOs. But the bottom line is, the time has come that we have to get more involvement from CSRs and a lot more from the government. So the linkage is very important now. So we have to have a fiscal linkage. Fiscal means all the money related linkage. Then we need a spatial linkage, that is critical infrastructure. How do we develop it? We need a backward linking, because if we don't have that, how are we going to supply whatever we are creating? We need a forward linkage. How do we make the best use of what we have? And finally, a knowledge linkage. Sector skill development technology has got so much, which we are going to have in this presentation itself by Dr. Medha, as to how do we make a best use of. So once we do all that, then points to ponder only remain. Need for separate glaucoma detection and treatment strategy. We need involvement of all, from policymakers to the last man in the treatment. We need utilization of multi-level approach from CLVs, VCs, outreach, secondary, tertiary, which we'll cover in this program, and funding from government, non-government, CSRs, everybody. And let's not leave this hall without realizing glaucoma blindness is irreversible. It is found in 2% of people above the age of 40. 98% of patients do not know that they have it. And in our country, we have 12 million suffering from glaucoma, and about 1.5 million people are blind. So the need is to act now. With that, I will say thank you, and we'll move forward. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And after that, I invite Dr. Sunita Dubey, who will be talking about the vision centers, as to how do we make these vision centers glaucoma friendly for detection, because truly speaking, there really isn't anybody who's looking at it. So if nobody is looking at it, let's look at it. Sunita, yours.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Sunita, it's very clear.
Okay, so at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Madhu for involving me in such a wonderful session. And I must congratulate her for training the ASHA workers and working at the ground level. So I think that is really commendable. So I'll be talking about the next step now. So steps to enhance glaucoma detection at vision centers. So just recapitulating the statistics, that glaucoma is the second most common cause of blindness. And WHO has estimated that 12.3% of 37 million people blind worldwide is attributed to glaucoma. And prevalence of glaucoma in India ranges from 1.62 to 3.5%. And 11.2 million people in India, aged 40 years and older are estimated to have glaucoma. So the bad news is that 90% of the glaucoma in developing countries and in India remain undiagnosed, and with the obvious reasons, because the community awareness in this program is very, very poor, only 10%. Therefore, we need to create community awareness. And what Dr. Madhu talked about, create, ASHA training, ASHA workers who are the first contact with the people, I think is the best way to create community awareness. And then poverty, literacy, and ignorance are high amongst these people, especially residing in low socioeconomic areas, and only 50% of the people with glaucoma ever visited an ophthalmologist. So therefore, there is a need for a more effective screening program and programs for creating awareness. So detection of glaucoma in earlier stage by effective screening is definitely going to substantially reduce the morbidity because of the disease, improve quality of life, and reduce healthcare expenditure related to glaucoma. However, it depends on the availability of sensitive and specific tests for detecting the disease earlier in population at risk. And as glaucoma specialists, we all are aware that population-based screening is not at all cost effective because of the low sensitivity and specificity of most of these tests. And therefore, you need to combine these tests to improve the sensitivity and specificity. If you look at this IAPB data, you will be surprised that there is paucity of trained ophthalmologists per million population. So there are just 13 ophthalmologists per million population and 39 optometrists. So forget about glaucoma specialists, even ophthalmologists are so less. So we do not have enough infrastructure in terms of manpower. So optometrists and vision technicians can play a very crucial role in diagnosis of glaucoma at an early stage, and they can form a very important member of the glaucoma management team at the vision centers, at the secondary centers, and even at the tertiary centers. And because simple key tests can diagnose glaucoma, which these optoms can be trained, and they can also help the patients by educating them, counseling them, creating awareness, demonstrating treatment techniques, monitoring their compliance and treatment efficacy, because that is another very big area of, of progressive blindness because of glaucoma. Also, they can help in pre-operative preparation and post-operative care. And if you look at this pyramidal structure, as I said, they are not only helpful in community and primary healthcare system, but also in secondary and tertiary systems. So now the fact is that there is a huge increase in the range and complexity of clinical work being undertaken by the optometrists. In all big institutes at tertiary care level, the optometrists are now trained to do the specialty work. Like we have glaucoma optometrists, retina optometrists who are very well equipped to do even fluorescent angiography and OCTs and OCT angios. And in glaucoma, they're doing all kinds of investigations, and the pediatric optometrists who are doing all kinds of workup for patients with squint. So they are specialty optometrists, and they bring a lot of benefit to the specialty ophthalmic clinics. And they are the excellent source to maximize clinical services with limited resource where we do not have enough ophthalmologists. Apart from optometrists, vision technicians, as I said, are the first point of contact in community settings because they're mostly working in the primary healthcare level, and they are very good resource to create glaucoma awareness. They can take lectures and educate people because people trust them. They are sitting in the community itself. So keeping in view the importance of cost-effective glaucoma screening, we had developed this protocol 2 years back, and it is published in this PubMed Index journal. So basically, it is to do the screening or detection of glaucoma in cataract camps, because what used to happen, this comes from the premise that when we used to conduct camps earlier in 2016 and 17, out of so many patients, 8,000 patients, only 0.25% were detected as glaucoma suspects. So this was pretty low, well below the prevalence, which is 1.6 to 3.5%. So that means only the proper screening or comprehensive screening was not carried out. It was just the torchlight examination and just identification of cataract was done. And it's been seen that model-based studies of community screening for glaucoma in rural and urban area has been cost effective. So basically, we developed this glaucoma screening integrated camps at vision centers, and the protocol for detecting glaucoma in cataract camps by these optometrists and vision technicians. And the eligible population for glaucoma screening is non-cataract patients. So the cataract patients will obviously come to the hospital, get operated, and then the detailed evaluation of those patients will be done. But the patients who do not have cataract will just go back without comprehensive evaluation. So we targeted these non-cataract patients in this population. And these patients undergo series of tests by trained optoms and vision technicians using predetermined glaucoma screening algorithm. So that I'm going to discuss. And then specific diagnostic cutoff points were given to them for diagnosis of glaucoma suspects. And then if they suspect glaucoma, they'll refer the patient to the base hospital. So this was a protocol which we developed. The patient will come, they will undergo vision test, and if it is cataract, then they will be counseled for cataract, some tests will be done, and then the surgery, they will go to the base hospital for cataract surgery. But if the cataract is not there, still they will undergo these tests, like IOP by eye care, disc evaluation by direct ophthalmoscopy, anterior chamber depth by Van Herrick's, and FDT. And if any of the criteria is abnormal, then they will be referred again to the base hospital. So for this, we developed a structured training program for these optoms and vision technicians, wherein they're trained in detailed history taking, slit lamp evaluation, angle evaluation, not gonioscopy, but Van Herrick's method, IOP with eye care, and optic nerve head evaluation with direct ophthalmoscopy. And these were the people who were responsible for the training. And then we validated them by this rubrics scale as competent, advanced beginner, and beginner. So after checking their findings for a set number of patients, like 50 to 100 records. And these were the parameters as to when they have to refer, when the Van Herrick's was less than 2, when the CD ratio was more than 6, or IOP was more than 22, or in FDT if they see one central spot in the center, or 2 or more peripheral spots. So these were the set criteria for the reference. So that way, I think we used to get a lot of patients glaucoma who were glaucoma suspect. Teleophthalmology and consult was another target area. And now we know everyone is having a smartphone and they can take very good pictures. So they can just refer those patients who are suspicious of glaucoma to the base hospital, or they can seek advice from the glaucoma consultants at the base hospital. So to summarize, community-based approach is much more effective for the larger population. And since there's paucity of specialists and even optoms, so it's worthwhile to train these vision technicians who can be instrumental to carry out such type of screening programs and also create awareness about the disease, so that more and more people can seek advice for their problems, and they can definitely help in early diagnosis and prevention of blindness because of this disease. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Sunita. A very nice presentation, really. And practically, I think without talking to each other, we are following almost the same model.
Yeah, I think we all have the same model.
Probably.
Presenters.
And with that, I'll request Dr. Shivani Dikshit to now present her work as to what do we do for outreach camps. So Shivani, can you please? Yep.
Yes, ma'am. So a very good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to thank Madhu ma'am and AIOS for giving me this opportunity. I will be speaking on use of technology for detection in outreach. I have no financial interest to disclose. So in a study done in southern India regarding the awareness of glaucoma, it was found that it was very poor in the rural population, and majority of the respondents who knew about glaucoma were not aware whether the visual loss is because of glaucoma was permanent or reversible. So for glaucoma screening, we need participation of general ophthalmologists and paramedical staff, especially MLOPs. And using technology, we can screen these patients with glaucoma, refer them to higher centers for further evaluation and management. We can change the paradigm and replace bulky traditional machines with easy to use and portable devices that are available now, like a handheld fundus camera, rebound tonometer, and virtual perimetry. So basically, all the three important parameters needed for glaucoma diagnosis, that is the intraocular pressure, the disc evaluation, and the visual fields, can now be provided at our outreach camps. Earlier, the smartphone-based retinal imaging made use of a simple 20D lens and the flashlight built in the smartphone. But these designs needed a pupil size of at least 5 millimeter to get a good image. Now, with advancements in technology, we have non-mydriatic portable cameras available as well, which are just simply attached to the smartphone and are easy to use. In a study done by Parekh et al. On using of fundus camera, portable fundus camera, it was concluded that the presence of fundus camera at an outreach camp can increase the number of potential glaucoma diagnoses by almost double. Earlier, we had studies mentioning that non-mydriatic disc photographs obtained by handheld camera were of moderate quality, probably because of the reduced quality of images. But now, with the upcoming models, a portable non-mydriatic fundus camera can facilitate in evaluation of disc images on par with standard mydriatic fundus photography. Moving on to virtual perimetry. So these are head-mounted perimeters, and they are based on the principle of integrating micro displays and a binocular eye tracker, which are enclosed in a head-mounted visor, and also a computer program for data collection and interpretation. We have different virtual perimeters available now, like Virtual Eye, C3 Field Analyzer, for which VIT and Arvind Eye Hospital have participated in the validation. Just briefing about IMO. Now, it comprises of an optical system which has a wide-angle lens system that can measure the visual field within 35 degrees from the fovea. And it presents test target randomly to either eye with no awareness by the examinee as to which eye is being tested. It uses a ZEST algorithm, a modified algorithm, which has been found to reduce the test time duration by about 70% as compared to our traditional 4 to 2 decibel bracketing strategy. The test programs offered are also similar to those of Humphreys, like 30-2, 24-2, and 10-2. In this study about validation of head-mounted perimeter in visual field screening, it was found that they were moderately effective at identifying glaucoma subjects. Now we have iPad-based perimetry available as well. There are different applications. One of them is a Visual Fields Easy app. So basically, it is a fast screening test, and it uses supra-threshold method to detect gross abnormalities in the visual field. So this tests approximately 24 points in all the 4 quadrants and can also test the blind spot position. There is another MRF visual field test app. The test is performed in a dimly lit room. The patient is seated approximately 33 centimeters from the iPad screen, and they respond by touching the screen or by pressing a key on the keyboard to the presented stimulus. In this photograph on the right, you can see that just by simply placing a cardboard around the iPad, how we can create a dimly lit environment with an appropriate distance of the screen from the subject. This MRF test pattern uses a modified 24-2 radial orientation centered at the fixation. Now, because iPad screen has small dimensions, so to test the peripheral vision, this fixation point is moved to the corner of the screen. Like in this image on the right, we can see that the fixation point is in the top right. Also, we can provide verbal instructions to the patients while the test is being performed. In a study on performance of iPad-based threshold perimetry in glaucoma and controls, it was found that MRF test application shows good performance characteristics when compared to standard Humphreys visual field for detection of glaucoma defects. Now, rebound tonometer is something we all are already familiar with. It is a lightweight, portable, battery-operated instrument, very helpful in mass screening programs. And as the probe touches the eye gently and is barely perceptible, no topical anesthesia is required. We have studies supporting good correlation between the IOP readings obtained with eye care tonometer and Goldman applanation tonometry, even at extremes of intraocular pressure. Now that the world is going digital and we are going paperless, we can make use of this technology and use softwares to maintain and easily share the data between our peripheral vision centers and the base hospital. The software that we use at Sitapur Eye Hospital is Vision Center Management Systems, VCMIS. It helps us track all the activities of vision centers, makes vision center monitoring easier. It's a very user-friendly software which provides day-to-day information about the OPD visits, the screening performed, treatments offered to the patients, and also their follow-up records. There is an inbuilt mail delivery service which helps us communicate the peripheral centers with the base hospital. This is how the patient registration layout looks like. This is where we enter the medical record entry, and you can see it's so user-friendly. On the left, you can simply fill in the complaints. Then the stepwise ophthalmic examination of each eye can be entered. To emphasize, I'm just repeating that in our country still, detection of glaucoma is an opportunistic finding in community patients who are visiting eye clinics for other ophthalmic complaints, especially for cataract screening. So effective integration of technology and telemedicine can really help us screen cases in our vision centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. You have really covered technology extremely well. But the thing was outreach somewhere, so probably doesn't matter. I'll add that for you, that all these devices, what she is telling, all these devices are being used in community ophthalmology, especially in the outreach camps. And as Sunita, if you remember, Sunita was talking about the thing. So all the people who are coming to cataract camps are also side by side screened, though no separate camps are held for detection of glaucoma. But all the people who are coming on site with outreach camps with the help of this technology, it's become very easy to screen them and get them to hospital. So all those who are found to be suspects, they are referred for a proper examination at a later date, but they are opportunistically at least screened, and the point is told to the camp sponsor and the people that you are the people, you will have to come separately for your glaucoma evaluation. Other than that, the people who have cataract and coexisting glaucoma, of course, they're brought to hospital and they're taken care of. So this was actually, Shivani, you had to integrate this portion with the technology, but never mind, you've covered technology extremely well. And so all I was required was I needed to sum it up. So now I will invite Dr. Sagarika Patial, and she has worked in quite a few secondary centers in armed forces, and she had really optimized them to be the perfect for glaucoma. So that was my thought, that what is required is now is at the district levels. She will translate that army thing into district levels. As to at district levels, we really need to have centers where something can actually be done, because after all, NGOs and all can do how much? Ultimately, it's the government setup that has to take care of it. So Sagarika, it's all yours. Please go ahead and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And actually, this is actually a wonderful topic, and we really needed to put in a lot of thought into it. And I have a couple of ideas while I was hearing all of you, and therefore I would like to share that. The first thing is, yes, it was the global initiative to tackle the problem of avoidable blindness by the year 2020. And this recommends that there should be a secondary level care center for a population of approximately 1 million. Have we really reached there? That's something we don't know. So basically, in a district level secondary center, this is a 30 to 40 bed facility. It is equipped to provide basic ophthalmic OPD services. But this should also provide diagnostic, therapeutic, and surgical services for glaucoma, besides support services. Now, I am always concerned about what is the ability of the ophthalmologist. Are we really training the ophthalmologist correctly in glaucoma? Because if you do not train them properly, they are not going to be able to perform even the basic tasks which are required for the correct diagnosis of glaucoma. So this ophthalmologist who is going to see all these patients, they must have an ability or a facility to improve skills at least every 2 years, so that they can go and have a rotation in a tertiary care hospital where there is an excellent glaucoma setup and keep on improving their knowledge. They must be skilled at aplanation tonometry. Gonioscope is an absolute must. Optic nerve head examination with a 90D or 78D. All of us realize that whether if you use a direct ophthalmoscope, you can see, of course, very well. And for screening, it is very good. And if you have nothing else, then this is the best. But if you are coming to a district hospital, you must be trained. The ophthalmologist should be trained with a 90D. Then should be able to read a visual printout. There are many people who just mug it up and in order to spout out the knowledge in exams, but that is not the thing. The ability to determine, is this what we are seeing clinically? Is this because of glaucoma or is it because of something else? And try to correlate the two. Also, when there is no perimetrist, the ability to go along and get a perimetry done for the patient and properly after explaining to the patient. That means not just knowledge of interpretation, but knowledge of how to get a perimetry done. Next is the person should be good at glaucoma follow-up, and not just follow-up of medical care, but also of surgical care. Because if the ophthalmologist cannot make out what is happening to the bleb, or is the bleb sinking, or is the bleb functional, then it's of no use. So that ability must be there. Able to conduct camps in nearby areas, and therefore, and also in language, which is in very, very simple language, so that people can understand it. Along with that, this type of camps should be not only for the adults, but it should be for college and school-going children. Because if you involve children, remember, you're going to get much better results. I'm not talking about the primary school children, I'm talking about the senior school children. Also, women of the villages, they are the people, if you're able to convince them that go and get an eye checkup done, then as you know, that if you educate the woman, the whole family gets educated. And also ability to train the ophthalmic assistants or the counselors who are there to teach them clinically, as well as the way they are going to use their instruments and whether they are actually catching the glaucomas or not. The next is, what is the equipment required? All we need is a good torch, a good dark room, a direct ophthalmoscope, which has already been said, slit lamp with applanation, and a rebound tonometer, which has been talked about. Pachymeter, I feel, is a must because that definitely helps. We have to have also dilating drops. And then before that, of course, as I said, knowledge to know whether the angle is open or closed. Antibiotics, before we do an applanation tonometry, we must also remember to clean our applanation tonometer. These are basics, but often not followed. Viscoelastic solutions should be there. Sterile cotton balls should be there, available in a sterile container, so that you're cleaning at least the tonometer head every time. And of course, sterilium. And these are the international standards have also talked about almost the same things. Of course, they've also talked about whether the patient can have an indirect ophthalmoscope. Indirect, I really don't know. Now, the optometrist, he should preferably come from the same area, because there is no language barrier. He should have good soft skills, good training, and the facility once again for skill improvement. He should be good at refraction, and you can use any one of them. In fact, the simplest is the Priestley-Smith mirror. You can comfortably use it if there's if the streak retinoscope is not available. And amongst all the charts, we must not forget the charts in regional language, besides, of course, dot, loop. Now, what about the perimeter? I'm not going to talk much about the perimeter because it's already been talked about, but the spottable perimeters is extremely good and especially can be used for camps. Next is this, as I said, it has already been talked about, so I'm not going to go into details of it. But what is important is that it can work on a rechargeable battery pack. There is no need for an external power supply, which is a major problem in many of the districts. And when there is community service, that means you're going into the villages, it becomes a problem. The smartphone use also, it has got huge number of apps in order by which we can detect glaucoma. Besides that, it also has apps in order for educating the ophthalmologist and electronic medical record keeping apps. Most of us do not have electronic media, records of our patients. So that is extremely important for us to determine all this. Therefore, I feel that record keeping can be also utilized. Important also is the patient-friendly apps to tell them, okay, now you can use a timer in order to put your medicines, because people keep forgetting. And our basic problem is when people do not adhere to medicine installation, and compliance becomes a problem. Besides that, you can comfortably show them how they're going to lose vision and how their time is going to be, or rather their work is going to be affected because of loss of field. There have to be certain medicines which must be kept in the OPD and certain medicines which must be kept in the pharmacy. And medicines in the OPD I've already talked about, but let's not forget a viscoelastic solution must be kept so that we can utilize it for our gonioscopies. Along with that, parakin drops, of course, and fluorescein drops in order to do the applanation tonometers. Now, in the pharmacy, besides the usual armamentarium of anti-glaucoma drugs, we must also keep drugs which we know that people get affected because of glaucoma medication in their eyes, like iCool, nafazoline, zoline, anti-allergic drugs, antibiotic drugs, because people are going to come with after surgery, then viscoelastic drops, because they're going to have a lot of problems regarding dry eyes because of use of medication, steroid drops, because people are going to be having medicine, have already undergone surgery, and cyclosporin, again, because of ocular surface problems because of surgery. Now, we must also have a minor OT, and in this, we must not forget that besides the normal armamentarium that we have in the laser OT, we must have suture removal forceps, 26-gauge needles, 23-gauge needles in order to give mannitol, sterilium, IV mannitol, IV sets, stand, butterfly needles, a speculum, and most important is we must have a sterilizer. We must never combine our sterilizers with other sterilizers, because remember, our instruments may get infected because it's normally ENT and eye which are combined together in most of our hospitals. That should not be there. If we can have a YAG laser, it's a fantastic thing. Along with that, the condensing lenses for that. We must have consent forms from each of these people, because remember, this is a huge problem. Now, what about the OPD? Now, the attendant or the counselor in the OPD can be a high school graduate who can explain how the patients have to register. He will help in filling a simple ophthalmic form, the history of the patient in which all the risk factors are enumerated, and then also the charts which are there, the patient education charts, which are in the language of the patient, of the inhabitants of that place, if he can explain it to them. Now, once the patients have consulted the doctor and come, he should be available to explain to them how to instill the medication. Very important thing is he must teach them practically on themselves how to instill the medication, how to store the medication in their own homes. And because this is extremely important in order to keep the sterility of the bottles, adequate seating and education charts, which I've talked about. He must have good liaison with the private practitioners. Why? Because oftentimes the ophthalmologist may not be having all the things within his reach, and therefore for urgent investigations, especially for laser treatment for acute angle closure, So he can immediately send. So liaison with the private practitioners in a vicinity of 30 to 50 kilometers, I feel is extremely important. And in a case of endophthalmitis, let's say a person has undergone glaucoma surgery and come and he needs treatment by a VR surgeon, and so it should be readily available. And of course, for a second opinion, which we keep asking. Now, something which we must concentrate on, and that is community-based services. Awareness camps. You know, we used to have awareness camps also in the Armed Forces Medical College, in which information used to be given by means of the television and the telephone to all people. It used to irritate people like anything, but believe you me, we got a fantastic response. We used to reach out to all the units. So when ma'am has talked about the army units, one can do that in order to get people to come along, and a particular form would be filled. After that, after those awareness camps, we used to have so many people coming just because the first time they would come to know that family history is so important, and they would say that, yes, please get a checkup done for us. So these awareness camps, even in a bigger center, are extremely important. The second awareness camps that we have held are in Leh. In Leh, the first World Glaucoma Day, rather not the first, rather I'll say on 13th of March, we had the World Glaucoma Day, in which we invited all the teachers, the police, and everybody who was of great importance in the Hill Councillors, as well as all the higher officials in the Army headquarters, in order to come along, and of course the families which were there, the officers who were there, and to hear about what is glaucoma. In that, we got hold of even the ophthalmologist who was in the district hospital in Leh, and so that we were able to join hands with him in order to improve the numbers of people, to make them aware about glaucoma. Along with that, we used to have camps in the distant areas. In this, I would definitely like to tell you all that there are many places in India, like let's say the high altitude, where there is the facility for digitalization is practically nil. In fact, we would never have the facility to even telephone our near and dear ones because of lack of the internet facilities. So taking photographs was okay, but then after that, what do we do? And then therefore, the thing was that if you can go along and just hold these camps in absolutely far off areas, just take your optome, take a couple of people who are working with you in the OPD and have these camps. So in a village called Taru village, which was far away from Leh main center, we used to have groups of 20 to 30 people coming even in the deepest of winter days, and the entire checkup was done. I hope to publish this at some point of time, where around 140 people, because villages in Leh are very small, very few inhabitants, those over 40 people were all examined in detail, whether ACT was done, the pressure was taken, the optic disc was taken. All these things were done in order to determine whether they had glaucoma. So their awareness about glaucoma also improved. Another thing which is very important is involvement of the school and children and the college children. Have all types of activities, nukkad nataks, competitions for glaucoma awareness, singing, hair, poster making, drawing, use whatever means, but spread the word that glaucoma is a disease which can rob you of your sight. Have village elders, teachers, religious teachers, sarpanches attend all these camps. If we can motivate them, then they are the people who are going to motivate people to coming and getting their eyes checked up. Along with that, regular activities like public awareness talks for local community, and as I said, involvement of school children, even the NCC and the NNS volunteers can be utilized and requested to help in activities to facilitate and creating a bond between the project that you are going for and the local community. And telemedicine, which has already been talked about, this is a great tool, but we must remember that there are many villages and cities not cities, villages and absolutely distant areas in India where this facility is not available. So we have to work upon that in order to think how we can do it. In the district level, as I said, we must have every facility in order to help the patient, whether it is we don't have a large perimeter, even a portable perimeter will help us not only in the hospital, but also in the screening camps. So the other thing is that therefore, the way we are able to lend one hand and go towards the villages, that is the district becomes the center, but these 6 or 7 district eye-level hospitals can then be linked. That means the other hand goes up to the tertiary level hospital. But we all must remember that in tertiary level hospitals, there are huge crowds. Therefore, the ophthalmologist must again have good liaison with the glaucoma specialist, so that he must, inform them that, look, I'm sending so-and-so person, so that please, can you have a look at them? They do not have this ability to stay over there, because we have to think as to when the patient goes to a tertiary level hospital, where is he going to stay? How is he going to eat? Is he going to take, if the lady is going, will a husband be able to accompany her? If the mother is going, then what will happen to the children of the family? All these things we have to think of, and therefore the best way is to expedite the entire process. And in this, what Ma'am Bhadoria was just talked about, in AFMC Pune, people were coming to us from all parts of Maharashtra. So what we did was, the patient was made to undergo every test possible in one day that they arrived with us. So he'll be able to complete the entire examination of a patient. Thank you so much for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Sagarika. You've already said that thing for Medha, that is the ophthalmology and the glaucoma. So now I will request Dr. Medha to talk about role of teleophthalmology. Medha, you there?
Yes, I'm there.
All right, so please share your screen. So
Yes.
I'll request Dr. Medha, who's really, I told you, she's the technology buff. So she would be talking as to how can we make the best use of technology, teleophthalmology available to us for glaucoma detection and for compliance. And believe me, in COVID times, the teleophthalmology for many people has been just a sheet anchor when the patients are not able to approach. So therefore, not only to reach the last man, even in difficult times, Medha, your value has increased multifold. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Madhu, for a nice introduction. I'll be talking on the role of teleophthalmology and technology for quality, cost-effective glaucoma care. The world is changing. Now we are becoming more and more virtual. So telemedicine is a delivery of healthcare services by all healthcare professionals using information and communication technologies. This is for the exchange of valid information for diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases and injuries. And most important is that it is helpful where distance is a critical factor. So it has a very promising future for glaucoma management. It's a next frontier in healthcare and a new field with great promise. It has gained widespread acceptance in remotely screening for diabetic retinopathy, but same can be applied for glaucoma patients who require long-term and frequent assessment. So it is still in initial stages as a screening tool, but there are certain papers and I would like to talk about these. So the advantages are, we all know that 50% of people are still undiagnosed. We have an aging population. So teleglaucoma can be a way to improve access to the care, screening and disease detection, diagnostic consultation, and long distance disease monitoring also can be done. Even some amount of medical management also is possible. So there are 3 teleglaucoma models. One is a traditional model where a teleglaucoma program can purchase all the equipments and provide trained personnel to a remote site. But this is the most expensive and most commonly implemented only in diabetic retinopathy, where only very few equipments are needed. Collaborative is a partnership with providers with access to different types of equipment, like glaucoma experts, and who can have patient access. So this increases the financial feasibility also. And maybe you can have in-house also, where the provider utilizes equipment and staff in their own clinic to deliver this daily glaucoma care. So application would be in glaucoma screening to screen high-risk individuals and assist ophthalmologists in diagnosing glaucoma. And after the screening, they can be evaluated with the help of telemedicine and referred for in-person care. So it can be also not only for screening, for glaucoma management, for frequent monitoring of glaucoma progression in existing glaucoma patients. So it can potentially improve the efficacy of glaucoma follow-up and streamline patients' follow-up experience and shorten the visit time also. So screening, as we know, we have to have questionnaire for patient symptoms and common tests like examination of fundus images, whatever we have discussed till now, like visual field, perimetry, IOP, visual acuity, slit lamp examination, corneal thickness, if OCT, if it is possible, pentacam, and also definitely refractive status. So this is a Mayo Clinic glaucoma progression chart. So here they have divided patients in 3 parts. Green zone is, there is some glaucoma suspect, dysuspect patients, but there is no perimetry defect, may have some abnormal SWAP or FDT or OCT. So these patients can be seen by an optometrist every 6 months and every 3 years by a glaucoma consultant. So moderate would be definite abnormal on cupping, automated visual field test is there, but not within 5 degrees of fixation, and RNFL or GCC analysis is abnormal. So these can be seen every 4 to 6 months by an optometrist and every 2 years by a specialist, but definitely a severe or advanced field which have glaucoma should be seen by an optometrist every 3 to 4 months and maybe by a specialist every year if their IOP and other things are totally stable. So cost effectiveness will come to this. So this is mainly time cost and money cost also. So it was more cost effective as in person for screening and also less time consuming than in-person visits. So it was decided that in the few studies which I have mentioned here, so it was almost effective by almost 3 to 3.5 times. So for this Markov probability analysis has demonstrated that in this 30-year overall risk of glaucoma development and the risk of developing moderate glaucoma was same as in teleglaucoma and as in IPC, that is in-person care, but the glaucoma related blindness after 30 years was definitely preventable, and 24% cases were definitely prevented with the help of teleglaucoma. So duration between referrals and tests were also better with teleglaucoma. The days, if you consider, they are really less, and even consultation time with the help of teleglaucoma and even the waiting time was less with teleglaucoma as compared to in-person consultation. Overall patient satisfaction was very good, and the mean satisfaction score for the model and quality of teleglaucoma was really good. There was positive responses were there for convenient screening location. Patients were likely to return to the same location for future visits, and many wanted to refer this program to their other relatives or friends. So coming to agreement between teleglaucoma and in-person care. So comprehensive ophthalmologist and between glaucoma specialists. So it was found that the agreement was moderate for vertical CD and slit lamp examination. It was fair for focal glaucoma damage like notching, peripapillary atrophy, and disc hemorrhage, but definitely substantial if FDT was concerned in patient of glaucomatous. Already they have disc damage, so it was very good. So moderate agreement was there between face-to-face and virtual clinic for management, and moderate level of agreement for management was there for in another study. So for specificity and sensitivity for screening, teleglaucoma had a spare at around 80%. It was not very good, but still you can definitely screen patients with this, and specificity and sensitivity for management was fair, but the sensitivity was questionable, but specificity was fair. So current use and opportunities for teleglaucoma, it is still at initial stage and not yet widely accepted as standard for glaucoma management, but can be used for screening for glaucoma in the targeted patients with first degree relatives, for identifying individuals with high risk glaucoma, and for identifying individuals in a group of patients where the glaucoma is prevalent but undiagnosed. So it can be used to reduce the demand for glaucoma appointments, and definitely can be used as a screening tool and follow for some patients. The challenges are the information is highly variable because this has been collected by healthcare workers and optometrists. So diagnosis by glaucoma specialist is entirely dependent on this, whatever information they get. The another issue is connectivity of these telecommunication devices. Dr. Sagarika already told us. Storage of data is very difficult because you have to transfer this data to the main center and store there. And the most important is the high cost of glaucoma imaging equipment, and it cannot be taken anywhere in the van or something. So this is a challenging situation for us. So how we use this teleglaucoma consultation in our COVID times? We wanted to avoid contact, and in India, the summary guidelines were updated in 2020 April. So this was really good. So what we did is we triaged our patients before their visit by teleconferencing or video conferencing following this Manchester triage system. And we could make out that patients can send good photographs of their ailments. And you can see that this patient might be having a buphthalmos. This is a actually operated patient, 8 years old, but the redness is not related to the bleb. So all these patients, we could tell them on a phone whether they can come to the clinic or can come to the nearby ophthalmologist. So all these tests, vision tests, perimetry tests are very well available on their mobile phones. And in COVID lockdown for outstation patients, we were able to triage them, guide these patients to nearest ophthalmologist. Yeah, I'll take just 1 minute and collect relevant data and able to call patients who needed emergency intervention. Prescriptions are possible. Safe drugs can be prescribed, and there are list A and list B where you can have refill or re-prescriptions. Virtual clinic, I just want to say that there is a synchronous model and asynchronous model. So synchronous is where patient and clinician interact in real time, and in asynchronous, they interact at a different course. So we also write this asynchronous model. So glaucoma has a potential for remote assessment. We already compile all clinical data before seeing the patient, and this can be advanced, and a new clinical interface can be found out of necessity. So this is a teleglaucoma flowchart, how a clinic can work, where the optometrist will help and where the ophthalmologist can help. The take-home message is, it is a chronic, slow progressive disease, and we need to find out, screen these patients before they go into irreversible blindness. So it may allow us to meet the growing demand of glaucoma care. Screening and management of already existing glaucoma patients is possible. It has a higher cost effectiveness because because there is a reduced need for long distance travel, and we can better utilize the resources. Better access to the care for remote communities is possible, and we can offer potential for higher efficiency and efficacy. Patient satisfaction is also good for in-person care and other things. So thank you for patient understanding. So we can move over to next talk.
Thank you, Medha, for very nicely covering teleophthalmology. And that is your clinic based, but for the hospitals, there is a way that most of us have vision centers. So and the optometrists can do all the examination, just connecting it to base hospital with a plain and simple computer. Teleophthalmology can be very nicely practiced, and that can reduce a lot of actually load and can give us very good results. And some more apps which remind the patients regarding drugs and all are also very important, could have come, but never mind. All the patients, I think by now know. And now finally, the night watchman is Dr. Kirti Singh. And she is going to tell us about what can we do in tertiary care centers, how can we optimize and make best for all that is being created by vision centers, secondary centers, teleophthalmology, and the buck ends here. So now, Kirti, the buck ends at your end. Please take care. Yes, Kirti, we can't hear you. Hello? Kirti? We are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Very loud and clear now.
Okay. So thank you for this opportunity. And it is a learning exercise for me, which I would value learning, because I would just share with my friends. I've recently been appointed as a state nodal officer of NPCB. And I'm the odd man out here because I don't have access to any vision centers, unlike my friends. So for me, any outstation patient which comes to my hospital has to be handled differently. Thank you, Dr. Madhu, for this opportunity. So I will have a session, question answer type of a presentation. Why do outstation patients come to tertiary hospitals? Primarily, they are from a rural divide. Because of lack of facilities and expertise at the place of residence, treatment costs there. Please remember this picture. These patients already are handicapped when they come here because of their issues at home place. Second question is, how do they present when they come? Most studies say that blindness is very high. A recent study at our center showed that 17% patients were blind at presentation and 84% due to glaucoma. Delay in seeking treatment because of travel, cost, and loss of work. Because it's silent, they present late. And I think this issue of Safed Motia and Kala Motia, this terminology caused a lot of confusion because many patients, when they come to us, they'll say, okay, put a lens in and we will start seeing. They do not realize that it is glaucoma and not cataract. This previous slide was validated by these studies from the Arvind group. 92% patients who were referred for glaucoma by another doctor, only 8% sought treatment directly for glaucoma screening. And the factors associated with late presentation were mostly residing in rural areas, in addition to other factors not related to our presentation. Now, the travel and dependence. Patients had on average to travel 2.4 hours to reach the tertiary hospital. 70% used public transport. 88% required another person to accompany. So you have to put all these three aspects into position. For one patient to come to, let's say, my center, Guru Nanak Eye Center, he or she has to travel long distance. How will they come? And they will have somebody else. So they have to ensure that one person comes with them. Third question, what is the patient prototype who come to us in a tertiary hospital? It's a huge queue. So how do we prioritize? How do we triage is a big issue. I'll come to that later. Whenever they come, as you saw from the previous study, most of them are referred here. Okay, they do not come on their own. Now the referral letter, most of the referral letters lacks accuracy. IOP is not documented in 61%. Gonioscopy, forget it. 95% has no documentation, and I don't think they do it either. Disc is not documented in 81%. Visual field 95%, and 37% who were referred as OAG were found to have ACG. And pseudoexfoliation was missed in 62% as per this study. This study was quoted by Shivani also, that awareness of glaucoma in the rural population is extremely poor. Only 0.33% were aware. And 56% of these aware patients also did not realize that it was an irreversible disease. So what Dr. Madhu was showing, the ASHA and the MLOP workers, if they can be sensitized, this aspect of awareness can definitely improve. Fourth question, what are the special problems? Now, not only the follow-up is different because of travel, cost, and the jobs of the attendant, the adherence issues. Many patients, 50% have problems, 16% non-compliance in the best of scenarios, 35%, I would say more, have poor installation. They are dependent on the caregiver, they have comorbidities, arthritis, tremors. This was a patient who came to my OPD. This was a mother-in-law of this patient who carried her because she had arthritis. And he says, nobody wants to take care of her. Her sons have given up on her and she can't see, ma'am, please take care of her. And she had glaucoma, not cataract. We would think that older patients have a problem. But this study showed that actually younger people have more problems because they need a longer follow-up. Travel, obviously problems are there. How do they travel to this area? So having covered their problems, let's come to the examination sequence, which I will do in my tertiary hospital. I would go the sequence which I always do: visual acuity, tonometry, gonioscopy, disc evaluation, field testing, and dilated fundus examination. Sometimes you do the reverse because visual field you want to do in the same sitting. You don't want to make the patients wait. And whenever you have a dilated visual field examination, the MD effect does decrease. PST effect is borderline, is also affected. However, having said that, for screening, it will be perfectly acceptable to do a dilated visual field examination. Only for follow-up, you may still think about it. The next thing I always stress on my residents is when you do the optic nerve head examination and the RNFL examination, just draw a picture. You don't need a fundus camera. You don't need a photograph. You just need this red, green color pencils and drawing. And this drawing has to go back with the patient and explain to the patient that this is what your glaucoma optic nerve problem is. It's an optic nerve disease. And whenever you show to anybody else in your district, just show this. And that works. And all my residents now carry these color pencils. It's a mandatory thing in my hospital to do that. So just document. Perimetry, try to make it accurate the first time because such patients really do not understand how to do perimetry. It's very difficult to do perimetry. Try to do it yourself. It's difficult. So a demo is given always to these patients. They are asked to blink multiple times and they are told just hold the mouse if you have a problem. So this is re-emphasized, and of course the refractive correction has to be given. Once you establish the diagnosis, and confirmed it. If it is PACG or PACS also, and the patient is from far off, I would do the iodotomy the same day. And keeping in mind the fellow eye, try to treat the fellow eye also if the patient gives consent. We all know that laser iodotomy does not open angle in all cases, and 1/5 still have residual angle closure. So long-term follow-up is required. Here, the last mile connectivity is an issue for patients from outstation. So we always emphasize with these patients, don't forget to follow up. The problem is distance and the cost. So link up to the local vision center, the ophthalmologist. I call up my friends or give the number of the local person. If they want to come back again to your center for an appointment, pre-book the appointment. Let them not wait and let them not, because they don't have the connectivity. So give them an appointment beforehand, take their contact number and take the contact number of the attendant. Now this is ID. You set the target pressure. Okay, you have the prior progression, risk factors, everything. In a outstation patient, this is a utopian concept. You can't really do it. Here, I would say the chop and drop policy, where management of glaucoma in developing countries, surgery is the first line of treatment. So wherever you feel that the target pressure is not going to be reached, you do not wait. You would prefer to do a chop policy because ultimately this may save vision for them. And this has been again echoed by the study from RPC, where they have said that trabeculectomy can be done with a reality check. We have devised this format for our glaucoma patients at the OPD level. And we have told our residents, we don't have a system where we have a referral system within the same day. Unfortunately, I'm trying for that, but that may not happen. But for one-eyed patients and those with high pressure and those from outstation patients, we tell the residents to refer to us within the same week. We have one glaucoma clinic per week. So that is the triaging or the prioritization for these patients. Whenever these patients come to us in the clinic, my resident asks them to put a drop. It's a sham drop. You ask them to put a drop if they are given the medications. And again, if they have poor technique of putting drop, which is very common, you show them the importance of putting drops and how to put drops. SLT or ALT can work in these patients because it can control the IOP and reduce the dependence on drops for a long time. However, again, this needs follow-up. Early cataract surgery if lens vault is high, if early cataract, trabeculectomy, of course, as I said, wherever there's a patient issue of compliance and the cost and travel. Whenever they have more medications, there is confusion that this patient doesn't know which drop he's going to put. So these patients obviously go for a surgery. My answers to the first question, why do outstation patients come to tertiary hospitals? One reason is lack of awareness in the health professionals of the silent disease. So how do I take care of it is I empower doctors of first contact, which is my MBBS students, the Indian medical graduate. Every year we have programs for them where they are told about the glaucoma specifically. We have a theme each year. Now, most of my residents, they come for the Viva. If I ask them steroid drops, side effects, first answer is ma'am glaucoma, because it's been drilled into their heads. Teleglaucoma has been so beautifully covered by my previous speaker. But wherever possible, this COVID epidemic has taught us that telemedicine may really work very well in most situations. And this is our paper which has linked iris clues, and this we can use with artificial intelligence in teleophthalmology. This is the India we should see, but this is the India which we very often have for the rural patients with these travel issues, with these problems. So keeping that in mind, I think this webinar was very important. This IC was very relevant, and I hope to understand more of these issues from my friends. Thank you, Dr. Madhu.
Thank you, Kirti. It was a really wonderful presentation. And when I really look at it now, just see that from the last man to the last man, we have reached the national capital finally. And each one of us has covered the strategies which are possible at different levels. And if we link all these strategies, I think we can make this country a really beautiful country for glaucoma. And now we have a keynote speaker, and that keynote speaker is Dr. Nathan Condon. And he is in Belfast as a professor of global eye care. And he did his graduation from Johns Hopkins. He's a Wilmer Fellow. and he's worked for many, many years in China. And in China, he was working with actually community medicine, and he still holds a post of professor in PSM in Ganzhou University. And he has sent his recorded talk. I'm not sure whether he'll speak or it's recorded. So I will request the backhand people to get him in if he's there. Or if he's not there, then maybe you can play his talk so that whatever time we are left, we can deal with question answers. Are we getting his recorded call? Back support? Yep.
Ma'am, sound is not disturbed.
There is no sound?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then do one thing. Put this on slideshow and run his presentation. And practically it's his presentation. So obviously nobody has a right to sort of this thing over it.
Okay,
And
ma'am.
after that, we can have our own discussion.
नितिन मुकुंद नितिन मुकुंद वेबिनार चल रहे पास लाऊंगा
हेलो नमस्कार पास ना होता और
सांगायचं ना वेबिनार
सांगितलं तिचा सेशन कधी संपणार आहे असं त्याचा प्रश्न.
पुढे
बंद करून एक 2 मिनिट व्हिडिओ संपली.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. So this was another presentation, probably creating an environment where the glasses would reach the last man. So here we are trying to reach the glaucoma last man, and they're trying to reach the glasses last man. Except that the refractive error people are most likely to have the high hyperopes or high myopes are more likely to have glaucomas. I don't think that's the only link. So now we have time, and I think we can have some questions. I don't see any question answers in this. So maybe we can talk amongst ourselves as to whatever we have talked, what are the areas which may have been sort of not touched upon, or how can we actually put all these things in a very quality perspective that we are effectively seamlessly able to maintain the service from the last man to the tertiary care eye center.
Ma'am, I think it's the finances which are extremely important.
Yeah.
And at every level, if you have a look at it, whether we are looking at the vision center per se, and mind you, the government can do so much, the NGOs can do so much, but I think it is the doctors themselves who have to understand that when they are, let's say, for example,
Louder, can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I said that the youngest doctors, who have just passed their MBBS, they are the ones who are posted in these village centers, right? And as if their knowledge of glaucoma, knowledge of ophthalmology is just about, and knowledge of glaucoma, I'm sorry to say, is very, very poor. And I feel that is all of us have been teaching the undergraduate students. So I think if we are able to drive home these few points that there's no need for details, but just drive home certain points like you, Dr. Kirti, talked about, like in fact, everybody's talked about, just optic nerve head and the pressure and things like that. Even if that is impressed upon the students, then that besides the Angarwadi workers, besides the vision centers, these doctors who get posted to these peripheral centers as their first time postings, that's going to be greatly helpful. That means drive home the point over there.
Sagarika, that's absolutely bang on the dot. And the last slide I showed was what we have been doing in my medical college with 255 doctors every year, sorry. And our interns, we had a program with our interns for steroid-induced glaucoma, because our interns go to peripheral postings, but they don't go to many peripheral, too far off. They go to like Najafgarh and other areas which are around 50-60 kilometers from Delhi. So the steroid drops aspect and the angle closure aspect, in any aspect, if we can reinforce those main aspects of glaucoma in the medical students or MBBS students, that is being done. The focus on any exam, we've all given exams during ophthalmology in our MBBS, and the focus is we are always given a cataract case. The focus is one and only learn about cataract, so much so that our students are so smart, they'll have these farras of cataract and they'll have just memorized that, and they can clear the practical with just 3-4 farras. They don't need to read the book also. Theoretically, because ophthalmology now is a separate subject, it wasn't a separate subject before. So for that, they'll read one book, and the others, for the practical point of view, they will not come to classes also. So we have to, since our seniors and the policy makers again have to reduce the emphasis from cataract and go into other diseases. And I think that is what is required at our level. Wherever we are a teaching institute, we are ophthalmologists, so we are teaching only ophthalmologists. But wherever you are teaching MBBS students, the non-ophthalmologists, the focus has to be on diseases other than cataract. Second focus with, I believe, that you have to interact with the physicians, especially for diabetic and glaucoma. You need an interaction with, let's say, the IMA or other associations, so that you can sensitize the physicians who treat hypertension, the physicians who treat diabetes, the physicians or the geriatric people are treated by the physicians, that they have to inform and tell the patients to get screened for glaucoma. That's only going to be possible in urban areas. In rural areas, what Dr. Madhu and Dr. Sunita are doing, the vision centers are still going to...
So I think Dr. Kirti and Dr. Patial, apart from educating and training ophthalmologists, I think education of the optometrists is equally important. And I feel that most of the optometrists are practicing. I think they're not just restricted to working
True.
in the institutes, they themselves are practicing. So it is, I think they can very well spread the awareness about the disease. So, and in turn, I have observed in my hospital that the senior optometrists and specialist optometrists who have been working with us for the last so many years, they even teach our DNB students and and our fellows about the about some procedures and even applanation tonometry, OCT fields, how to perform, and even they are very good for counseling of patients and all. So I think we have to have an integrated approach wherein we can integrate our services right from vision center to tertiary care. So I think that will be really good, because I think it is not just dependent on one person or the ophthalmologist, because we don't have that many doctors. We have to take up other streams like optometrists and vision centers, and we should get involved in their training. I think.
True. Sunita,
I
actually, if
totally
you
agree.
everybody has put in the points. We are just getting over the time. So let me put things in perspective, that each one of us had told specifically our areas where we have worked, and if we put it together, then the real thing is that people who are in tertiary care centers, they should provide the excellence of service to the most complicated glaucomas. People who are in the position of around the government offices, they should work on policymakers to make a systematic program. People who are otherwise clinicians, they should work, and teachers, they should work on students. People who are in paramedical, who also have paramedical thing, as Sunita said, I'm more sure of my optometrist today compared to the doctors who are coming to me. Believe me, what she's saying is so 100% true. So but it's not ending there. We got to make the public aware, and we got to make the media aware, we got to make the practitioners aware, and we got to make the patients aware. And this is what actually UP Rural Eye Health Program was. It was a 360-degree coverage of all the people who are linked. But unfortunately, it wasn't only a glaucoma focused program. It was a complete eye care focused. And from there, actually, I took this idea that the government needs a glaucoma focused program. So with that, I would say thank you. All the friends, you all have done a great job, and Medha bringing a great perspective, and Shivani bringing technology. I think if we all think like that, and we tell all our friends to change the paradigm towards more detection and more, what do you say, advocacy, and a lot more towards good treatment protocols and good treatment, we'll reach somewhere. With that, thank you so much. And with that, I think we should end the session, because we are done with the time actually. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
Thank
nice
you.
having everybody here. And thank you,
Thank you.
AIOS. You're last, but very important.
Very important. Yes.
Thanks.
We should increase more preceptorship programs, something like,
Yes.
like junior
Yes.
ophthalmologists should become more aware
Yes.
that this is also important.
Yes.
May not be a what I say, earner,
Ah.
not like cataract is different. They earn from cataract, but glaucoma is equally important, and they should not neglect these patients. That should be made aware.
Yep.
Thank you,
so much.
doctors, for such an
Thanks.
informative session.
Thank you. Thank you all.